Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bookish podcast. Before we even get started, I just want to give you some housekeeping things. So, I recently read Pride and Premeditation by Tarza Price. It is so good. It is my favorite Pride and Prejudice retelling right now. So it's kind of like murder mystery. It's so good. Please read it. There will be a Patreon episode coming out in about March with Bethany from Prince Kai Fan Pod. So please check that out. It'll be a lot of fun. Also, if you haven't joined the Patreon yet, it's now donation based. So starting at $3 a month, you can get unlimited access to everything that's on the Patreon, and you can listen to the backlog of all those Patreon exclusive episodes and the ones that are coming out. So every single month, the first Friday of the month, there is a Prejudice. There's a Patreon exclusive episode every single month. So please consider checking that out. And speaking of Patreons, thank you, Bethany, for joining the Patreon. It's awesome. I appreciate it a lot. So, if you want to join the Patreon, go to patreon.com/barelybookish and you can see all those great things. But without further ado, let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we are continuing on with Kindred with Candace.
Hi.
We are now going to be discussing The Fall. And again, just still really digging this book so far. Very stressed out, but digging it. So The Fall starts out with Dana is working at something called a casual labor agency, but she's calling it a slave market. So this is like a flashback into, we're getting a little bit of insight between her and Kevin's relationship, which I'm going to have a lot to talk about. And so this is like before they were married and where they just met. So Dana and Kevin were both working at an auto parts store, which he worked at, and then she was like a temp person. So she just like kind of filled in when people needed things, and like they were sending her out on different jobs, just like basically what it sounded like, making below minimum wage.
It sounded like warehousing or something like that. Yeah.
It sounds terrible. That's all I gotta say. Like, poor Dana. She's really going through it. Like, she really is.
Yep.
So Kevin asked her to lunch because he heard that she was also a writer, which, still trying to figure out how he heard that. Seems a little sus, but it's fine. I don't trust this man.
No, me either.
Good.
I don't trust him at all. I mean, he seems fairly genuine when you see it from her perspective, because like she talks about, like in Dana's flashback, she talks about, how like she was kind of attracted to him because he was kind of like, he was aloof to everyone but her. He took an interest in her before she took an interest in him, kind of thing. And the way she talks about him is so favorable. But I feel like there's also something a little ominous about the way that they've met, especially because, like, like you said, she kind of immediately likens it to a slave market, right? And I think that, like, when I read that, it was so powerful because I was like, oh my God, you don't even know where you are or when you are right now, like, yet. Like, you have like a glimpse into when you are, but like you don't really know. Like, she hadn't really experienced, you know what I mean? So like she's flashing back to this time when she was like, oh my God, it was slave labor, not realizing that, like, you will soon know what slave labor is, my friend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, right? Like,
so very stressful.
I feel like people really, it's like all things, people kind of end up taking words that were really impactful and like diluting to them.
Yeah.
Like, and just using them in everyday language.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is one of those moments where it's like, ooh, yikes. I don't like that. I hope Kevin gets better, but I hate that man.
Me too, because he's not great. And I feel like they give us, like, again, she gives us this glimpse into who he used to be. And even then his questions are dumb. Like, he's asking her, like, oh, did you fail out of college and stuff, instead of assuming, like, he notices that she doesn't eat her lunch. He notices that
Mhm.
she works this like job that's beneath her, and he makes
Yeah.
assumptions about her anyway,
Mhm.
even though it's pretty clear that there must be more to that story. You know, he's always kind of been that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he feels like he has a lot of internalized racism
Yeah,
too, you know? And it's like that mixed with the fact that he feels like a pedophile. Like he really does. Like he feels like he's grooming her. Like this entire interaction, it feels like grooming.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I
good.
could see that. I could
Yeah.
see that. And it feels like you know he's down on his luck
Mhm.
to him. But when he looks at her, I feel like he thinks that that's like she's doing better than expected. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying?
Yeah.
And like the part where he like, you know, where they like, you know, talk or whatever and they like move in and all that stuff and like, you know, when she talks about how like, oh yeah, you know, he wanted me to like type up his pages for him, right? Because they're
Mhm.
both he finds out they're both writers, and yet he still kind of gets to a place where like she's going to be his secretary somehow.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like he just devalues her
Mhm.
from jump, like from the beginning of their relationship. And it's like, you know, does it say more about him that he would treat her that way, or does it say more about her state of mind and the state of our country at this time, because
Mhm.
it's the 70s, that this woman puts up with it because she feels like, you know, this is actually pretty good compared to what she could expect from the average white person.
Like
That's rough.
he very much I saw this TikTok video, I guess,
Hmm.
about this woman talking about her ex-boyfriend and how he was like a really nice person,
Hmm.
but like he wasn't a good partner. And
Yeah.
like this feels like Kevin. Like he doesn't seem like a bad person. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't seem like he does anything terrible. He's like kind of thoughtful, but he's not a good partner.
Right.
And I
He's not.
don't like him. I don't like him at all.
No. No. She'd be better off kind of on her own, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like, you know, before that, she was at least inspired. You know, she talks about how inspired she is, and she talks about the reasons that even though she has, you know, most of her degree under her belt and
Mhm.
unfortunately like ran out of, you know, like care for
Mhm.
what she was studying and, you know, wanted to kind of take that further in a different direction.
Mhm.
Was trying to figure out what that was when she met him. Like, even though that's her reality, I still feel like, you know, he doesn't do anything to like help her get there. You know what I mean? Like he
Exactly.
doesn't like, like it doesn't feel like he like really encourages her. He doesn't take her seriously.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that I find like really unforgivable because she talks at length about how much she supported him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate him. I hate him
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Ugh. Okay, we'll get
Absolutely.
into it more, but like
Hmm.
going back to the story. So they're eating lunch, and Kevin's like, "Hey, I sold my first book, so I'm quitting." And I'm like, "Of course you are, Kevin," because like that seems very Kevin of him. Like
Yeah. Some
I love,
privilege.
yeah, I love and I appreciate authors. All of you are doing great, but like, could you imagine you sold one book and you're
Yep.
like, great, now I can quit my job and do this full time? Like I don't
Yeah.
know a single author who committed that hard after selling their very first book. I think most
Yeah.
people probably were like, okay, let me write a second one before I fully, and I feel
Completely
like,
agree.
yeah, and I feel like a lot of authors still do something at least part-time just to make sure that you have like a steady paycheck that isn't your own thing. And I don't
Yeah.
think that's rude to say. I think that most people probably agree. But like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that like says so much about him.
Yeah. Well, like if you look at Children of Blood and Bone, right? Tomi Adeyemi, I believe you say her
Hmm.
name. That's how you pronounce it. So
Love that book.
she's a doctor
Hmm.
in real life, and she's still a doctor. Like she still does her doctoring. She's not like, nope,
A doctor of medicine.
not doctoring. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. That's what I'm
Love that
saying.
for her.
Like
Killing the game.
this lady like did her job and
Mhm.
wrote like a pretty long book. That book is not a small book.
Yeah.
And then is now writing a sequel and helping with the
Mhm.
screenplay, and I think she still is a doctor. I mean, maybe not right now that like the movie is being made, but like
Mhm.
when her book came out and like was what started being a bestseller, she was still a doctor.
Wow.
And like I have a friend that's a prominent graphic novelist. She works on
Mhm.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles now. Like she's a big deal. And I
Mhm.
remember when I first met Sophie, she was working part-time at like a Kinko's. Like she'd work the graveyard shift at Kinko's
Mhm.
because she could make like, you know, copies of all her comics, so it was like a win-win. But she
Mhm.
would work like anywhere between 8 and like sometimes 14 hours a day of like somebody called out. And like she had already published with Oni Press. She had published
Mm-hmm.
with Vertigo, I think already. She had done like a couple Vertigo comics and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
like she was fairly prolific. She was on the rise and didn't quit her job. So I do think that that is very, especially because like he's comfortable enough to quit his job, right? He's comfortable
Mm-hmm.
financially enough to quit his job, but he's
Yeah.
not comfortable hiring someone to type his stupid book.
And like the other thing is too is like he's comfortable enough to quit this job that obviously doesn't have like a severance package or like
Yeah.
anything like retirement, nothing. Like it doesn't have anything of continual value. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
it doesn't seem like there's anything that it would have paid him well, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. Like this feels like a very much a minimum wage to like $10 an hour type job.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying about him and his perspective. Like he doesn't seem to, he doesn't recognize his privilege.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't recognize it at all. He just kind of like dives headlong into it and is like, yeah, figure it out. Like some
Mhm.
people don't have the, the privilege of saying, yeah, figure it out. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
and like I'm certainly not somebody who can just be like, I'll figure it out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I've been working at my job for some time. And like even when you want something more challenging, sometimes it's not the right time to leave. Like,
Yeah.
we were just discussing a little while ago, March 2020 wasn't the time to leave anyone's job.
That's when I left my job, but I did live with my parents. So, whoopoo.
Because you could leave,
Yeah, I
right?
had the
So like,
privilege of doing that. Okay, I'll be
yeah,
honest. Like, not a good idea, but like, I was literally in the house, my bedroom at my parents' house, and I was like,
yeah.
okay.
Well, this is what I'm saying. So I think that like he doesn't recognize, like, I know that, I mean, if I quit my job tomorrow, would I largely be okay? Yeah, I think I could probably get another
Hmm.
job quickly enough to like keep myself afloat. But
Hmm.
like I still think about, what the future holds. I still plan.
Hmm.
I still am like, you know what? It's better to, better to stay than to just like, fly off the handle and go or something like that. But this guy
Hmm.
isn't thinking through his life.
No,
He
he's
doesn't
just like,
care. He's talking to 22-year-olds at warehouses.
yeah. Keep in mind, we find out Kevin is. Hold on, I wrote it in my notes, and I can tell you
12
exactly.
years older
Yeah,
than
isn't he
her.
like 36, 34?
He's 34 and she's 22. Yeah. So she's
That's
like
grooming.
yeah, it feels that way.
I just
It feels that way. It does feel like grooming.
because he could have a child her age.
Yeah. Technically. It's weird.
I don't like it. I don't like it. There's enough distance between you and your spouse that you could have a kid in that time, that
Yeah.
horrifies me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I don't know. I think that it's very it's mentioned very offhandedly.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes what? 100 it takes like 50, how many pages? 57 pages for her to acknowledge that gigantic age difference.
Mm-hmm.
So like it takes, you know, 57 pages too, I'm pretty sure, for you to find out that he's white as well. I think that's the
Mm-hmm.
first time that she's like, he's a different looking white guy, and she explains like what he looks like. So like
Yeah.
it takes 57 pages for her to be like, all right, I'm going to tell you this. And like you have to think too, like when this was published and when it's set.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sure that it was probably already awkward enough for her. You know what I mean? Like we find out, more about like, her dating him and what people said and what people thought and all that stuff, like in their families later
Mm-hmm.
on. But like, that's pretty prolific. Like usually in a family, just the age difference would be shocking
Mm-hmm.
and crazy, but this is like,
Yeah, I had
this
to
is
text you.
May, December, and fucking
I had to text you, and I was like, so Kevin's white? Question mark? Question mark? Question mark?
I was like, yep, he sure is. I know, right? You didn't even
Yeah.
think about that.
I didn't assign him anything. I just like
Right, you're
assigned
just
him the
like,
name.
yep,
And
a
then like,
guy.
I don't know. I was like, this is Kevin. And then I'm like, it's not that him being white's a big deal. It's the fact that she's going back in time to a slave market that he's white and it's a big deal. You know what
Of
I mean?
course. It's situationally a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, this is worse. This just got worse.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So much worse.
So much worse.
But also slightly better for a little bit, which I
Right.
imagine is your segue into this next part.
Mm-hmm.
But like, arguably, that's not better.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
different.
So, as we did mention that he noticed she wasn't eating, so Kevin bought her lunch, and then made a bunch of assumptions about her life. But
Mm-hmm.
Dana literally tells us that she used to work at an aerospace company as a typist, and she did the newspaper and press releases for the entire department, or the entire company before the department got laid off. And I'm like, literally girl bossing,
Yeah.
and had to go from girl bossing to trash job that kind of allows her to get more writing done. But like, and Kevin's just like, oh, you just, don't do anything with your life. Like, no, Kevin.
Yeah.
First of all, like that type of career, like temp agency stuff, is literally what new college grads do. If
Yeah.
you don't find a job right away, it's
Yep.
perfect for most new college. What do you think an internship is, basically?
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So it's like she's in the time of her life. What does it say about you, Kevin, that you're working at the same company
Yeah.
that hired someone to do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it says more about him than it does about her.
Absolutely. And I think that, like, I wonder if that's like part of why he's like, I've got to leave here right away, because he
Mhm.
realizes that he shouldn't be there. And like, that's like the one time that I feel like he is trying to get her to leave, is like when he's like, well, I've made it and I'm leaving, and you'll
Mhm.
make it and you'll leave. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
that's the one time that I was like, huh. Um, but like, it's still not enough. Like, it's not
Yeah.
enough. And it's interesting too, like her segue, like Butler's segue
Mhm.
from the last scene to this one, right, to like this new one, because
Mhm.
like she goes from like having this conversation, um where like she has this conversation with Kevin, like about like what happened and where she was, and like someone was trying to kill me, and like it was really scary, and you look like the patroller, and she's like giving him all this context,
Mhm.
surrounding where she was, how she's feeling, what
Mhm.
she's going to expect for the next time that she gets pulled in, right?
Mhm.
And like then it just like flashes back to like how they met. And like my
Mhm.
first instinct was, why are we talking about this now?
Yeah.
Like, what does this have to do with anything?
Mhm.
Like, you flashed forward, you came back. Like, what is, why? What's
Yeah.
next? You know what I mean? Like, I was very intrigued by her decision to kind of bounce around, and I wonder if it's meant to like make us feel as jarred as she feels bouncing through
Mhm.
time, because it seems so random.
Mhm. I like that idea. I do. I really like that theory. Like, I really like this writing style. I'm not normally a big, like, what's that called? Like, I don't like flashes through time
Nonlinear.
much. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that. But like the way she breaks it up by like chapter and like segues to it,
Mm-hmm.
I really like it. I
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
It's very good, and I think it works perfectly for this story because it's like, as she's flashing through time herself, as you said, we're also flashing through the story, so it doesn't feel like jarring as much.
I agree.
Or
Yeah.
I guess it does feel jarring, but like not to the point where it's like, she's walking through a rose bush. Remember roses that she saw when she was a child? Like it's not
Yeah.
that sense.
Yeah. Where you're like, oh, that was 1,500 pages ago. I'm so glad we're doing this.
Yeah, right. Here's just like the hot tub episode in anime.
Yeah.
um the Naruto Shippuden flashback episodes in which in the middle of a war scene that we're still trying to get through for 50 episodes.
Yep.
Casual.
Yep. We're going to take you down this long and winding road
Mhm.
through all of our greatest hits. You're like, yeah, you mean all the greatest hits I just binge watched like within the last 2 weeks? Could you like
Yeah.
get it on, please?
I literally still need someone to mark down the Naruto Shippuden episodes where it's actually the fight that's going on, because I gave up. Like, I think I was like 100 something episodes in, and I'm like, at this point, I don't even remember what like fun fight punch we're on. Like, I don't remember who's going or what's happening. I just remember these weird plot lines we've got. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need all of it. Thank you. Ugh. Anyways. So her job and his job ended on the exact same day.
Mm.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And he invites her to a play because she's a captive hostage.
Yep.
So the date of the play, she invited him home with her. And like, here's my thing though. Again, going back to, I really legitimately feel like he groomed her because she was a captive because he made her have lunch with him
Mm-hmm.
every single day she was there. So of course
Mm-hmm.
she grew to like him because he was around and paid attention to her and she didn't have anybody else in her life at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
like, he had like 2 weeks to do this, or like
Right.
10 days, I don't know, 10 businesses, I don't know. And then she invites her to a play immediately after. So it's like she never gets away from him. She never gets like a step back from him. Like she sees him every day.
Yeah. He overwhelms her.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I hate
And
it.
then he tells her that she looks older.
Of course he does.
Like, this dude is just like striking out, man. By the way, you old bitch. I mean, how old are you? She's like 22. He's like, oh, well, you look old. Like, who says that to somebody?
It felt very much like that "you're mature for your age" thing. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes. Gross.
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah.
I do not trust this man. Like, get her away. Get a divorce. Get out of there, girl.
Yeah.
And of course, just thinking about it too, he has an office.
He does.
She doesn't have an office.
No, because he has a fancier job. I'm sure he probably makes slightly more money too, just based on, because again, like she's
No, in
talking
their
about how
home.
this. Oh, that's right, in her home. Okay,
Yeah, in
sorry.
her home. They're
Yes,
both
he
writers,
has an
apparently.
office.
He has an office. Where is her she shed?
Yeah, no, she don't have one. Not a one. Not a nary she shed in sight.
Yeah, she was putting her bookshelves up in the living room, and he has an office.
Well, he's like encroaching on territory too. Like, oh, are you really gonna put that there? Like, get out of here.
Literally. And like she was talking about like, separating out all that stuff, but like,
Yeah. So
no.
something else that kind of caught my eye too is the way
Mhm.
that ends. I put like a
Mhm.
little note for myself. Um, so she says, like you said, she brings him home. The night
Mhm.
was even better, she says, whatever. Sometime during the early hours of the next morning when we lay together, tired and content in my bed, I realized that I knew less about loneliness than I had thought, and much less than I would know when he went away. So in my head, I'm like, okay, well, if you spend a good night with a man,
Mhm.
right, with a person, whatever, and you like when you're by yourself, you think you know everything about loneliness, and then you're
Mhm.
like, actually, you didn't know anything about loneliness until this moment. And I'm like, so does that mean she feels a little bit lonelier with him? Or does that mean that like she didn't know she was lonely before?
Yeah.
Because like one of them is she's giving him her whole heart and
Mhm.
trust, right? And one of them is she kind of knows that this isn't perfect.
Mhm.
But then, like she says, like much less than I would know when he went away. So like to me, like they can't both be like, this dire loneliness of being by yourself and like not
Mhm.
having someone to love. Like I feel like they can't both mean the same thing. I feel like one means I wasn't that lonely and the other one means I miss him. You know what I mean?
Mhm. And plus, it's like, too, it's making her reliant on him. Like,
Yeah.
they've not known each other long enough for her to be lonely when he's not there. But
True.
he's made it to the point where it's like every waking moment is about him and her while
Yep.
she's at her job. And it's already basically been established that she doesn't get to, like, have much time away. She works from moment she wakes up to moment she goes to bed. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, if this guy's giving you attention for what's probably 8 to 10 hours a day,
Sure.
you're going to be like relying on that attention.
Yeah. And
And
I think that's like especially true when you consider like the juxtaposition between how he behaves in the early days of their relationship
mhm,
and then her like forced loyalty and obligation to Rufus. Like both of these like white men are like
mhm,
inundating her with their neediness,
mhm,
even though both of them should be completely capable of taking care of themselves. Like, granted, Rufus is a kid,
Yeah. Maybe
but
not
like,
Rufus, but soon, right?
I mean, he has more agency than she does in that time period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, he's not in grave danger. His dad's never going to kill him. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like there's, he is in less danger than she is.
Yeah.
And the only reason that I think like she like allows that to be, you know, the reason for her, I think the reason that she allows herself to kind of be swept up in Rufus is because like once she starts realizing like, oh, someone named Alice, I know that I have someone named Alice in my family, and
Mm-hmm.
she starts putting those pieces together, she realizes that she's literally fighting for her life. And like I'm wondering, like, is that how you feel too? Like, is that how she felt too, to a lesser degree, with Kevin? You know what I mean? Like, is she fighting for a life that like he's put in front of her that's better than what she was doing before? He finds out that she typed for an aerospace, facility or whatever, like some rocket science level stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and is like, oh, well, then you won't have any problem being my secretary.
Literally.
Instead of being like, oh, so you're brilliant and you can understand all these algorithms and all of these reports, and oh, so you're really smart. Like, no, he's like, oh, so you're a good typist.
He's like, perfect. Great.
Great. Don't mind if I do.
Yeah. I literally think he like married her so he wouldn't have to pay for a secretary.
I mean, I would argue that he doesn't really show enough love and affection to even fight you on that.
Yeah, and it's like he just seems to really be in love with the idea of her instead of actually her. Like,
yes.
And I don't know. We don't get any sort of like, I don't think he said I love you yet. To be honest. Like,
That's a good question.
I don't remember him saying it. I wish I had the Kindle book and then I could just search that.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like he said, and honestly, I don't know if she said it either. Like, it doesn't seem like she's overly in love with him either.
Yeah, it seems like it's convenient.
Yeah.
Like, I agree with you. I mean, he's said that he needs her, but need and love are two very different things.
Exactly. Like, they feel like they're just roommates who sleep together and just happen to have gotten married.
Yep.
Listeners, let me know if I'm wrong. Tell me the page number that someone says I love you, okay? Like, because at this point I need it, and someone needs to tell me. I need to know. But then we get flashback to modern day, and Dana is reasonably afraid to be in a moving car, and she's like, listen, I'm not going with you to the library. This is a terrible idea. Like, what if I come back and I'm just in the center of the road? Which, honestly, can we just appreciate her for having like the only logic in this entire book?
Yep.
Like, she doesn't question getting thrown back in time. She immediately goes, well, she questions it, but like in a normal amount. And then she immediately like, how do I handle this? And what do I do? Like, she's not like, oh, this is unfair. This is not something I should go to. Let me go get a person, Like, she's like, fight to survive.
Yeah.
And I have to appreciate her for that. Like, I'm sure it's horrifying, but like, I'm just happy that she did that and this book can continue on instead of ending on page like 25.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think is one of the best parts about this happening to this specific character, is that we know, because of all her like weird odd jobs, that she has a lot of different kinds of skills. And we also know that like out of necessity, she is somebody who, is a problem solver. So like this logic that she kind of, like clings to, right, in this book, that like makes her definitely stand out from like all the other characters, and to, help us kind of on our journey of trying to understand what's going on, and kind of piece that together alongside her. I feel like, there's a lot of downplaying. Like, she spends a lot of time in this book kind of downplaying herself and how amazing she is, even though we're kind of on the front lines watching it.
Yeah. I really like her a lot. I really do.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see her throughout the book. We can write Kevin out. Like, I don't care about him at all. Like, I know he makes it through because he's in the hospital room at the beginning of the book, but like, if he just happened to get stuck back in time, I wouldn't feel that bad.
Yeah. Agree.
which, we'll talk about when we get to the end of this reading. But so next point, she starts getting sucked back in time. And Kevin, because he's a absolute moron, decides the best way to handle this was to comfort her, even though she was pushing him away.
Yep.
He grabs on anyways. Which, first of all, before we even get into this part, everyone likes to be comforted in different ways, and he's trying to comfort her as he would want to be comforted.
Yeah. Well, he's a smotherer.
I know.
Yeah. Even when she came back like the first and second times, like he wouldn't just like leave it alone. She was like, "Hey, can you just let me sleep? Like I'm really nervous. Like I'm really scared." Like when that guy hit her and she came back with all her bruises and marks all over her, she was like, "Hey, I've just got to just give me a minute. Like I need to catch my breath. Like I'm fading out. I don't want to go back there right now. Like let me just try to focus." Like she's being really specific about what she needs, and he's just like, "Did he rape you?" Like that's
literally,
like, how is that what you ask someone as their eyes are closing, man?
I
Like,
know.
you know what I mean? Like, what? So insensitive. Like, does not care. And I don't think that he's as like cold as like I think we are seeing him, but he certainly isn't as feeling as he needs to be, in my opinion.
He feels very like performatively empathetic. He's asking the questions that he thinks you're supposed to ask someone instead of listening to what she needs.
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
you're totally right.
he just like fully grabs onto her, basically bear hugs her as she's being sucked into time, which again, terrible idea. Kevin does not think through any of his like actions at all. Like you don't know what's going on. You have no idea what's happening here. And your solution is to get two people mixed up in this problem. Like, I'm all for, your wife, like you and your partner wanting to work through something together. But not to the point where you're being sucked into the past uncontrollably. And you decide that you also need to go into the past when really what should probably happen is one of you stays in time, if possible, to figure it out from the future when we have technology. I don't think both of you going to the 1800s, not a great idea.
I will say, if I were to go into the 1800s like this, I'd probably want to take Jason.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because like Jason is white, and I would feel like he would have a better chance at keeping me safe than I could keep myself safe. But like, this is also not a man that even wants to acknowledge the differences between them, like day to day, let alone in this time period. So very much a double-edged sword. I mean, he does provide her a modicum of safety while he's there, but like she even says, like, now that he's traveling back in time with her, like there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to keep her safe. And isn't this world going to change him? Like, what if this world rubs off on him and changes him? And the second I read her saying that, I was like, oh, because he's already terrible and you know that? You'd only be upset or concerned if you knew he was terrible already.
Yeah,
so.
Plus it's like, it's one thing because it depends on who you are as a person. Like for her, she is so scrappy that it's easier for her to get through this world by herself and to get out of the situation. Like she can run and hide. Kevin's not going to run and hide. Kevin would talk to the freaking patrollers, and that's the problem. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if you no. So, yeah, I don't know. I just think, like, it just depends on how you would handle, like, if you're going to be a runner or if you're going to, like, try and make the best of the situation. And I think she's supposed to be a runner and Kevin's trying to make the best of the situation, which is not the solution.
No, not smart.
It's just, you can't have two people trying to combat this in opposite ways. You have to work together.
Have to work together. Yep.
Like, she wanted to run originally and go north, and he's like, and she's like, I guess we'll teach Rufus to be a good person. Like, yeah, I guess, because you don't really have an option here.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I do wonder, like, if I were in that situation, what would I want to do? And I imagine I'd also want to flee, but I also feel like part of me would be like, yeah, but even if I left, like, even if I ran away,
Mm-hmm.
like, what if I just get teleported right back here anyway? And then I've made this fucking
Yeah.
arduous trek where I've encountered all manner of racist individuals on the
Mm-hmm.
road that have tried to kidnap me and sell me into slavery because I don't have my free papers. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
that's like some crazy next level shit. I mean, even just for her, like, she's coming as, you know, in 1976, like, black people were free, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
like, it wasn't an easy time. Like, the Black Panthers were out there trying to, you know, kind of subvert the status quo. You had, you know, Dr. King was dead, Malcolm X was dead, like,
Mm-hmm.
all these great leaders had passed away. You had, you know, people like John Lewis that are trying to like work their way up in government and politics and things like that. Like, you had a lot of people doing a lot of different kinds of work to try to like move African American and Black people forward in
Mm-hmm.
America. And this person goes back to like the root of that, back to this
Yeah.
time that like people want to pretend doesn't exist. I mean, even now we're still fighting about whether or not to educate people
Mm-hmm.
on the horrors of slavery and how poorly Black people have been treated and other minorities have been treated in this country. And like, that's such a waste because it basically circumvents like any kind of betterment,
Mm-hmm.
any opportunity that we have to be better as a society. You know what I mean? So I think that like that's why this is so much more evocative for me, because I think about like, you know, I'm reading this, you know, rereading this, I should
Mm-hmm.
say, in 2021. She can't imagine Rufus's time, but she certainly couldn't imagine this time. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
she couldn't imagine like what the future held whatsoever. Just like when she goes back in time, they can't imagine like what, you know, what reality she comes from,
Mm-hmm.
despite knowing that it must be different because of the way that she acts, the way she carries herself, whatever. So like, it's so astounding to me how lost both of these people must feel, you know what I mean? And how at home one of them is going to feel eventually.
Yeah, I don't trust Kevin at all. I think he's gonna.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that guy is going to be like all right living in that
Yeah.
time period, and that freaks me out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You should not be alright. And like the worst part too is like when he like attempts to stand up for her and makes it worse.
terrible.
So, yeah. So she does end up accidentally taking Kevin into the past.
Mm-hmm.
Totally not her fault, but you know, it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that this time Rufus fell out of a tree and broke his leg. And I'm like, this kid gets into more trouble than I've ever seen any child get into. And
Yep.
also, that's not life threatening. I don't know why she got sucked back in time for that.
It's not life threatening, and that's what I'm saying. So like, you've got two people, like two white men,
Mm-hmm.
that are like making this woman be put upon. Like, literally, they are taking her out of her life
Mm-hmm.
so that she can make their life easier and better.
I do just want to theorize
Like,
really quick too, because we know at the very first chapter, like the preface,
mm-hmm.
that she lost her arm because she got sucked into a portal.
Mm-hmm.
So, was Rufus trying to grab her through this portal?
That's a good question.
Is there a possibility that he's going to try and not be with Alice, be with her instead? Did she try and use her? Like, I don't know. I'm starting to, like, at this point, really try and think what makes that situation occur.
Yeah.
And I'm getting nervous.
Yeah.
Or did Rufus's dad try and pull her through?
Yeah. And it makes you wonder too, like, if it is Rufus's dad, does that mean that they're now in on the secret that there's this other parallel world she comes from? Because if she was sucked through a portal, that means there's a portal for her to be sucked through.
Yeah.
And that means anybody can see it, because we already know that like Rufus gets harbingers, right? He gets like little flashes, little moments in time where he's like, what? And he can kind of hear her, or maybe see what she's doing right before she goes through, right before she like lands. He can kind of hear her. He almost gets like the same aura that she gets, you know? But like, I do wonder, because I think the first time that it happens, he doesn't, like, the very first time that he's like in the river drowning, he doesn't get like a strong sense of her. it's not as strong as the second time she comes, and then he like really gets a strong sense. Then he like knows she's coming. You know what I'm saying? Like he's like, wait, who's talking? And like he sees her just like in her room or whatever. And then the this third time that she came with Kevin, like he hears her, like he knows she's coming. You know, it's like less and less of a surprise each time she shows up, which I'm like, okay, well, does that mean that this kid has ultimate control over this then?
And it seems like he's like omnipresent because he doesn't say he sees it through her eyes. He sees her.
Right.
So is it the house that she lives in? Is it just, I don't know what it is, but it freaks me out.
Yeah.
What is he looking through?
Yeah. Yes.
Ugh.
Definitely a freak out. I mean, the only thing that I was happy about when her and Kevin got pulled through this time is that I know she has her little canvas bag.
Yeah.
But then, like, we find out that that idiot who's a writer and knows she's a writer for some reason didn't fucking add a pen and paper to the stupid.
Or like a dress. Like, if you know you're going back to the 1800s, why would you put pants in there?
Because he's an idiot.
I just don't understand. Like, peasant dress exists. You know, like it is not that difficult. If you're going to the library anyways, just stop by a Walmart.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not going to lie to you. I do have an extensive collection of costumes in my house because of my various hobbies. However, even if I didn't have various hobbies, I would still have at least one thing that could pass. It might look like a fancy version of something someone might wear back then, but like it's good enough.
I at least like have a modest dress that I can make work. Like people, if I got thrown back to 1800s, people would be like, that looks a little weird, but they wouldn't be like, that's wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like what I'm wearing right now, that's wrong.
Yeah.
So I just don't understand how this man, who's literally a writer, like your whole job as a writer is to make stories in your brain. How can you not envision that if she's getting a canvas bag, she probably needs a dress that's not pants?
Not thinking about it, not paying attention. Still barely believes that this is happening to her. That's why.
Yeah.
It's not until he goes back himself and is like, oh snap, you are in slavery times. Yeah. Like that's what it takes for this guy to be like bought in.
Trash bag.
Outrageous.
So then Kevin gets like really defensive when Rufus calls Dana the N-word and is kind of making fun of this and he's kind of just making the entire situation worse. And he's like starts to like lecture Rufus, and Rufus is our only ally. The only one you can't lecture your ally. You know, like no, I agree. Don't say that word. But also, how about we like don't worry about that right now? You know what I mean? Like this kid doesn't know.
Yep. Well, I mean, when he calls her the N-word, it's because he's trying to explain to Rufus like who he is as a person. And that's his reaction, like N-words can't marry white people.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't even know why he was surprised. Like if he believed Dana, then he would have already thought of something better to say. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I mean about him. Like he doesn't seem like he ever really like decides that he gets it until he's there. Because like, you know, obviously you're going to want like to be doing covert ops. Like this woman came home with bruises and welts and fucking blood on her from somebody beating her. So if you believe that you're actually back then, you're not going to say like even when she's the one who convinces him like, hey, you need to play along. It's not like he's like, hey, I'm really sorry, like gonna come out straight away and say, hey, I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to pretend like I'm your master and that's gonna suck, but like it's gonna keep us safe, it's gonna keep you safe, and I'm gonna do everything I can to keep you safe. Like he's not even doing that. It's not even like he's like, you know what, I'm gonna be your knight in shining armor. He's just like, that's my wife. And it's like, I understand you saying that's my wife, you're presenting this as care, but it comes across as ownership to me.
Yeah, it does.
Rather than care.
And he does it to like, I don't know. I don't think he does it out of the goodness of his heart. I really don't. Like, I think he knows in the back of his brain that this is going to make the situation worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Does she belong to you? He asks. And Kevin goes, in a way, she's my wife. Does she belong to you? She's my wife. That's wild.
No.
That's wild.
Yeah. Like, if you think you belong to someone because you're married, that's the first problem.
Yeah. Like that's some old school stuff. And like she is not that to me it was also jarring because it's so obvious that Dana is a modern woman. Like
Mm-hmm.
even down to how she chose her career. Like when she was working at that temp agency, like she even says, she's like, yeah, the people who work with me, like most of them aren't people that are just down on their luck. They're like drunks or
Mm-hmm.
they just got out of jail or like they're not like, the finest creme de la creme of society or whatever. They're people that like had a hard life
Mm-hmm.
or need a second chance or whatever. That's not who she is. She's working that job because it's easier for her, it's more convenient for her, whatever, right? So like you see who she is and you see how she is. You see how self-reliant she is. You see how independent she is, like
Mm-hmm.
how strong and brilliant she is. Like she's already gone through this 2 times before this on her own and has been alive. I can't even say that for myself, and I'd say I'm pretty smart. But like I feel like I would already mouthed off to the wrong person and probably
Yeah.
gotten like shot by now in this universe if it were me. I would have definitely not lasted more than like 20 minutes. So like there's this testament that we see of like how brilliant this woman is and how strong she is. And this man is like, yeah, I own her.
Yeah.
She belongs to me because she's my wife.
I really think like that's his thing. Like he likes owning her because she is a strong, independent woman and she doesn't need him. Like she really doesn't. She has no benefit to this relationship at all. And I
No.
think he's power hungry. I really do.
Yeah, I could see that.
This is a
I
Heaven
could see
Hate podcast.
that.
Dana is trying to explain to Rufus to not use the N word. And she's like, hey, remember we kind of talked about this? Like, I don't like to be called that. And she's like trying to, like, basically because Kevin opened the floodgates here. She's like, so this is where I'm from. I'm from this year. Like, that's why this happened. Because now she has to explain to a child time travel because Kevin couldn't keep his mouth shut for 3 seconds.
Yep.
No one asked for this.
No.
So Jaina tells Rufus that they are from 1976, and Rufus is like, I don't know about that. But the thing I think is interesting is that Rufus was more willing to believe Dana than her own husband was. Her own
Correct.
husband.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
He
right.
believes her beyond a shadow of a doubt. And
Mhm.
the first time that he expresses any kind of, doubt or confusion is with the addition of Kevin. Like
Mhm.
that's who's confused him. Like he automatically knows that Dana is different the second time that he sees her because the first time he's too busy, drowning and trying to
And
recover.
being
Yeah.
4.
Right. But like the second time when they finally strike up like a conversation, like it's pretty obvious that he respects her.
Mhm.
Like he immediately stops calling her that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not as though it takes her convincing him.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So I feel like, this is a kid who is uneducated.
Mhm.
This is a kid who doesn't really know how to read. This is a
Mhm.
kid who, yeah, is privileged, but like is obviously on the lower end of the totem pole as far as like slave owners and their
Mhm.
children are concerned. You know what I mean? He's not like, some grandiose plantation where he has, hundreds of people, enslaved to
Mhm.
that property or whatever they, they live in this mansion or whatever. It's not even like that. It's like a smaller property. He's like a lesser, noble for lack of a
It's like a
term.
lower middle class
He's
citizen, I
like a
guess.
fancy farmer. Like
Yeah.
he's like a better farmer. Like that's it. You know what I mean? And like he has very limited knowledge of the world outside of his purview. Him
Yeah.
and his dad, they both have very limited knowledge. And yet he believes her more than her college educated writer, published author husband.
Yeah.
That's see, and that we come back around to the loneliness, right?
Mhm.
Where she was saying like, oh, I didn't know loneliness. I thought I knew everything about loneliness until that night, and then I knew even less about loneliness after he left. And in my head, I'm like, girl, you're alone all the time with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's like trying to make her addicted to him.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yep.
Hate Kevin. I hope
Yep.
anybody that's named Kevin that's listening to this is probably like really in their feels right now.
Well, even Rufus doesn't believe Kevin.
Mhm.
Kevin has to like show him a coin
Yeah.
to prove that he's from where he's from. Like he implicitly believes Dana beyond a shadow of a doubt. And he's like, oh, you? I don't know. He has every reason to believe this other white man.
Mhm.
That's the person he should have no problem believing. And still he's like side eye. I don't know about you.
Because it's like he's so abrasive. He really
Mm-hmm.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. So my favorite thing is Dana and Kevin trying to think of situations that happen, but like Rufus is like, listen, I literally don't see anything about outside of this farm, so I have no idea what you're talking about. And I like love that, because if
Yep.
I was in that situation, I don't know anything about American history,
Yeah.
so I'd be like,
They were like, John Quincy Adams is going to be president soon. I'm like, sure.
yeah, sounds about right. I don't know.
I know he's related to John Adams. I know that. Whew, look at me.
You're going better than I did, because I know George Washington, and that's it.
Yeah.
Lincoln's in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Many years later.
Yeah,
Yep. I know
that's
there's a while between those two. But that's
I
what I'm saying.
didn't.
I feel like the average American probably wouldn't be. This is what I mean. They wouldn't be able, especially this day and age, because you'd immediately go for your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
You'd immediately go for your smartphone and be like, President 1830. Oh, no Wi-Fi. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't, couldn't tell you. And I think the thing too that makes me laugh is just like, have you ever looked at what it takes to become a citizen in America?
Oh, it's nuts.
I don't know half the answers to that test.
No.
Maybe
No.
not even half. Like, I I remember when I was in middle school, someone's mom I knew was becoming a citizen, and like I looked up the example questions, and I'm like, no idea, couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I think the
I think
54th
everybody
state
should.
was the Hawaii 50.
I think that everybody should have to take that
Yeah.
test. Every American should have to take it too.
Yeah.
Because then it gives you an opportunity to fill in your gaps of knowledge, and I feel like we'd all be a lot happier if we actually like knew the truth. Like I had somebody quote Hamilton to me as proof of something that happened in history, and I was like, that's like a play someone like wrote, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not like that's not real.
You know,
right?
that's like fanfic, right?
They're like, but why would he have said that if it wasn't real? I'm like, because it's entertaining? Because he wants your money? I don't understand. What do you mean? Why wouldn't he say that? It's a play. Like what this person like genuinely thought. They were like, no, you don't understand. Our founding fathers all hated slavery. I was like, Lin-Manuel Miranda's cast hates slavery.
Yeah.
But our founding fathers were like, it's so good having free sex and free labor.
Mm-hmm. Hate to break
this
this
is
to you, bud.
I love it so much. I don't really care because I'm going to convince people that these individuals are lower than humans and that they don't actually have feelings. So shrug. Like that was those were our founding fathers. And I think that like, again, with critical race theory, and the reason people get so touchy is because they're like, oh, we don't want to like shit talk our country.
Mm-hmm.
But like, to me, it's more of a testament. And I mean, same with Dana, like it's more of a testament to strength. You know what I mean? To like, to see where we've netted out, to see where we're going. Mm-hmm. Like it makes you more hopeful because you can see how far we've come in 200 years. Like you look at other countries, like 200 years was just like how long their terribleness lasted. Mm-hmm. And then like more terribleness came after that. And then there were like 3 civil wars. And like now things are sort of good. Like that's like half of Europe. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like we're actually like doing pretty good if like in 250 years we've ended slavery and had a black president. Like mm-hmm. we're making slow strides, but they're strides.
Yeah.
You know, and we need to keep up with that momentum. But right now I feel like people are just like, we want to pretend that America wasn't once, you know, really young and stupid. And it's like, why? I shaved my eyebrows one time. Like that was terrible.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen. It taught me not to do that ever again.
I feel like we're right on that cusp too, where it's like we could either start progressing or we could start backsliding. Yeah. And we're right there. And I'm nervous.
Me too. Reading this book has made me both more nervous and less nervous at the same time. Rereading this.
I will say, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm currently reading The Taking of Jake Livingston. And at one point, he's like in English class and he goes, I hate that we had to read such and such classic author. I don't remember who it was. And he's like, I'd rather read Octavia Butler. And I'm like, pew, pew, pew.
Yeah. You're like, what's up? Octavia Butler is the best.
First, also, if you haven't read The Taking of Jake Livingston yet, and it's this guy's debut novel, and not a spoiler because it's literally immediate. One of the POVs is in a serial killer's.
Ooh.
Serial killer? No. sociopath. He shot up a school. Mass shooter.
Yeah,
Not a serial killer.
Mass shooter, potentially a psychopath or a sociopath, though.
So
To do
half of
something
it's
like
in
that
point of
usually,
his.
or
Yeah, half of
very interesting.
Yeah, it's buck wild. So
I will check that out.
please do, and then text me
Great
about it.
cover art, yeah, for sure.
Right? Yeah, no, it's really good cover art. I think you might like it. It's twisted. But that's all we have time for. Thank you all for listening. Candace, where can people of the internet find you if you'd like to be found?
Everybody, you can find me at Candace the Magnificent on Instagram, all one word, as well as YouTube. I do some content on my own time. Recently, I've been on an ice cream review kick, so please head over there and check me out. You can also find me at Valor Studios, VALORE. I am one of their cast members of Deadlands, a tabletop role playing game vlog that airs on Twitch on Wednesday nights. And then the episodes are uploaded onto YouTube on Fridays. And you can also, hopefully soon, find me on Spotify. Dungeon Jedi Masters has a new show coming out called Scattered Choices, and I play Tula Batunde. So by the time we air this, it should be up.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Barely Bookish podcast. As I kind of mentioned at the beginning, we do have a Patreon, so if you want even more content, please consider checking out the Patreon account. That's the best way to help support the podcast and get access to a bunch of really great bonus content. Plus, you get access to the Discord, and the Discord will be a lot of fun, so please consider joining the Patreon. We do have quite a bit of content coming out the next few months, so make sure to check that out. Also, we're going to be doing Kindred for a while, but after Kindred, we are going to be doing Peter Pan, so I just want to give you guys that little fun heads up for anybody that does listen to the outro. Yeah, so if you want to find me, I'm at Barely Bookish on literally everything. I love to make TikToks. They're not very good, but they're there. So yeah, I will catch you all in the next episode. Thanks so much for listening. Our logo was designed by my little sibling, Sarah. Our theme song is by Raphael Crux, and I will catch you guys later. Bye!